And we're here. Welcome, one and all, to another Spurk special where, okay, no feedback. How am I sounding? We good? We good? It's silent. You're gonna hear a little me real quick. Nope, we're good. Okay, cool. Anyways, so we're gonna go back to our good old project here. Big giant freaking conversation, which is probably gonna close out soon. I'm gonna have to reset into a new conversation at least. At least I can load that. But we're gonna go over the use of multidimensional geometry, geometric relationships, mathematical relationships, etc. Right now I'm cycling through a prompt and just really expanding on everything that's within the model already with what's not in the model, like what's out there in terms of physics, relative mathematics, numerology, geometry, like, literally everything. This is somewhat a way of perhaps maybe having a theory of everything in an unconventional manner, not as a giant standard model, but rather as a visual geometric like relationship that literally explains everything in like some way, shape, or form. So with that basis, I was the most recent, and this was at least my initial belief of how like this pixel or system would work in terms of like a measurement of space or the measurement of the ether or whatever you want to consider it as. And this again goes along with the string theory, tautology, and a bunch of other things. If it loads. Thing has went through so many iterations. Oh my god. Try here. Oh, that was an old version, that's why. Okay. Yeah, so we got big bird over here. We got the 3D. I still haven't fixed this yet. This is still gonna take a while to go through, because if this gets too big and I have to switch over to Claude Code and doing everything on like in a sandbox on the desktop, then I guess I'll have to do that. But yeah, that's the file size is about like it's only 5 megabytes, which is, I mean, for a model that has, I mean, so much shit, like literally so much stuff. This is my favorite. And in fact, I got this working. So I got my nomenclature put in, my terminology, the way I write out these variables, like separately, not using Claude. This is literally my mathematics that I worked out separately, that I put into this model. And literally it's this mathematics that's sustaining the coordinate system in and of itself, apparently, because it's designed using SVG, and I don't know. It's just designed around a singular point. It is very laggy. But the cool thing about this is once I find div knows a div multi. So these are the new equations. If I just did, I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see better. Hopefully. Try 150. There we go. That should be pretty visible. So RA, this is the radius relative to A. The inner radius, so the diverging aspect, any radius that is typically related to A in this relationship, and to show you even more so, let me go to actually activate. I'll do the spheres because the colors are nice. I have to stop the thing though. Little quirks about this, because this is so processing heavy, and it literally pushes the limits of JavaScript code and just code in general, calculation, everything. Because I'm trying to make this as pure and open as possible, but also not sacrificing performance too much. Because, like, I mean, for instance, thank God, like, a lot of performance, I could just switch off to a different panel, and I'll get the performance back in terms of frame rate, in terms of what I want to calculate relative to what. Okay. So all the rates. I also expanded the I slider past the... This was relative to the cosmological constant problem in scale, because this whole aspect, and the thing about the cosmological constant problem in and of itself, is I don't think it's a solution necessarily. I think it's just a feature of the fact that we are so far from the Big Bang, because of how time dilation and simultaneously the acceleration of space-time itself due to the interaction potentials of smaller and smaller mass scales, but more of those mass scales, because what happens when things explode, they scatter into smaller scales. They don't necessarily completely dissipate. A good fraction of it does into like basic particles and stuff like that, unless it's a black hole. Then you're literally all of it is like not antiparticles, but basically because of the speed at which black holes and the density and everything else, all the forces being exponentially raised because of proximity and like mass density of a black hole. It's just that much of a phenomena where there's so much centralized mass in an area, and that's also why, again, the formation of a black hole requires a certain scale of mass energy. We know that because there's the life scales of stars, like cosmology. So so because once there's so much mass within a localized area, local causality, this is where local causality matters in quantum mechanics in terms of state, in terms of potential state of existence. And that's just a fundamental aspect of the physics. I mean, that's what we're explaining, right? It's what it is. That's what the singularity is. Like, we know that from our experience with stars, from measuring our own star, from what we see out there, from, translating UV light, and not even just UV light, but the light spectrum relative to energy scale. And we're very accurate on that. There's no discrepancy in at least how we understand those aspects. It's the hidden loss factors, which we do kind of measure. We do measure like the loss of mass of the sun during, like, over time. Same thing with the Earth, because the Earth is shedding mass, whether it's atoms leaking from the atmosphere or neutrinos coming from the core, because all the grinding that's happening in the core, there's nuclear fusion in the core of our Earth. Well, that's how it works. That's, again, a density, like, phenomena. It's an extreme density phenomena. That's what it is, fundamentally. So with that in mind, the cosmological constant problem is more so just the perspective difference itself. That's at least how I see it, which is why initially I rendered a scale between that and the supposed, it's like a relative factor to Planck energy or something. I forget exactly where I saw it, but I figured the 123 would be the highest exponential scale, because this is what the I is, just the intensity scale relative to the shell power scale, etc. That's why this is set at 60 and this is running so slow. You can't, it's running in such a way where, like, the it's just, I mean, it breaks the visuals, but it's moving as accurate as the code will allow it. With quantum computers, we can get a much more accurate, like, clock, but in terms of, like, decimal places for a lot of the calculations within this model, and what's been, like, reinterpreted from this fundamental relationship, has been within, like, decimal places of error, like, consistently. There's been some, like, the obviously the cosmological constant problem itself, something like a Planck pixel. From Planck pixel to, like, say if this was, like, the smallest measurement that we're doing of space, or this could be the largest. It just depends on what you consider each sphere, each set of spheres. And in terms of at least the 2D relationship, because this is originally postulated by me from a philosophical understanding of what a theory of everything should look like. That's just how I literally have stated within my thesis that this is a working from backwards perspective and using mathematics as a language, and which is what it is for physics and science. Like, literally, that's what we use mathematics as, a measure of state, measure of a state of existence. The binary, it's everything that I've been saying for the past year and a half. And it's shit that I've learned about on my own and in school. It's not hard. This isn't like AI knowledge. It's millions of content creators, at least at this point, whether it's TV, like old school TV, History Channel, like Bill Nye the Science Guy, stuff like that, Neil deGrasse Tyson, like way back in the day, just like the popular, science communicators. Like, I've watched a lot of those. Maybe not as much Bill Nye as I should have, but even then, still, with that, and like, I did pretty well at school. I paid attention for the most part. I still retain a lot of the concepts and aspects that I've learned. And with the internet, I have a way to at least remind myself and to look even deeper at between what I have already learned and experienced, like through textbooks, through everything else, through television, through literally like a more strict regulated education system, but in the right way, like to ensure that people could get to this point to develop this type of technology. Which it's ironic because now everyone's relying on it and no one in school really gives a shit anymore. It's bad. There's no real incentive either because everyone's losing jobs. We're at a very, very, very questionable state of our existence right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, not even just financially, but everything else. But you can see now we're finally getting to the end at a 60 scale. And this is just related to let me go to the step factor. So how this calculates is, and this is why it's kind of important, but the step size hierarchy is n of p is a max, which is the only other set value. In this case, I just did a max of 0.5 because the diameter would be 1, and that would be the square framework of 100%. This is just in relative to statistic modeling in everything, and that was literally the whole design of this like model and thesis and like what I'm doing now. So between that and using this function with the negative p will give this like an inversal property, so that it ends up being like a multiplicative property. And since our only other factor besides h naught, and h naught could be set to whatever we really want, the initial h naught is set at a step size, like, and this is like the fine tuning of the whole like runtime of the model. So 5 times 10 to the negative 3. So 0.005 or a 0.5% movement, basically. And I did that relative to the statistical analysis of A max. So that's basically like a 0.1%. Like we're measuring tenths of a percent. And that's where I'm starting at least the fine tuning of this entire model, the step factor. That's what the h naught is for. And then the 10 to the power, this is basically a logarithm, like just taking a log at this point, or dividing by a log, I don't know. The negative exponent in this case has a special property, and then using my consideration of how mass energy distribution works in general, like with everything, basically, the inverse square power law. You know, how light travels, it loses like a quarter of its like power, basically, depending on the source intensity, all that good stuff. So one thing I noticed with that equation, like relative to photons, so just pure energy in and of itself, which is what this is meant to be a representation of, that transfer of pure energy from state to state. So, I mean, theoretically, using this makes absolute total sense. Just using that and understanding the geometry behind, I mean, this model, because you can just imagine the squares, or I can turn it on. Hold on. I gotta remember, because there's a lot. There's a lot. There it is, squares, dimensions. Pew. Pew. All right. I mean, it has one there. The other one, yeah, it has done on the 2 main sections, but that's just, you could just imagine for the rest. Let's speed it up. See, I can just switch the area. This area is tied to that pi r squared, and then the 4 I just leave in there as, I mean, that's a part of the aspect. I gotta go back to the panel. So that pi e squared, that e is basically the circle that it's referencing, whether it's a or a minus a max, which is how I get the negative radius in this region. And then this one, I keep forgetting. I did configure all 4 at this point, but I mean, ultimately it was just easier to map it. This, I guess, could be considered, I mean, this would be like an a max minus a, and then an a minus a max, for depending on which coordinate, in order to keep it in the positive in one way but negative in the other. And then opposite for this. This would be basically measuring the potentials of the conservation relationship. That's why we have 2 separate things here. We have literally the energy that is going from one state to the next, from mass related to space distribution and the possibility of what can happen, which in reality, what can happen will happen, or what will happen could happen. It's a weird conundrum in and of itself, but ultimately realization, we have to realize, right? It's inherent in the scale. Let me make this go faster, brother. I keep like zooming in somehow. That's weird. Okay. Because then basically, I don't want to do too fast, it's gonna lag. It runs more stable too the longer that it can go, which, I mean, funny enough, that relates to literally how mass energy lifetimes work in the universe. How, you know, larger scales of mass tied to energy last longer. Like stars last a long ass fucking time. Black holes last a long ass fucking time. Kind of. They have special qualities that change that a little bit, but ultimately they do last a long ass fucking time. Especially with, I mean, part of the quality is that they suck in and destroy everything, and that adds to the mass because the event horizon captures everything, and it eventually interacts with the singularity. Because yeah, I mean, with all the high temperatures on the outside between the event horizon and then depending on the size of the black hole, I mean, it is relatively hot from our like perspective where we exist, right? Like no matter what, because it's still like hundreds of degrees Celsius higher than what we can exist in. So yeah, but in terms of like from black hole to black hole, there's like kind of a big scale, depending on also like how fast it's spinning as well, and that depends on the types of interactions that are occurring, or probably like mass scale. I'm still learning a little bit more about that. That's a lot more to consider. But anyways, this is still moving slow-ish. Yeah, the only, like I said, the only issue with going through this is oh my god. Besides my desktop bugs, there we go. Is some panels have a lot of calculations. The reason why this one's calculation heavy is because I also have ways of considering literally every area, surface area relationship with every single radius that has been derived from this relationship. And what I mean by that is there's thousands of different radii relative to this simple relationship. Now you can see more clearly the square framework I was talking about. So you can just imagine it on there as well. Yeah, it is kind of drawn. Yeah, it is. It's just faded. But that was the initial thesis of at least like how scales work. And also we have to consider what the maximum values is, because again, this whole engine is mostly driven by maximum values. So relative to A max, perfect, beautiful. This is what it should load and look like. This is literally a representation of our lifetime in the universe in, well, flow. Scale, I'm still working out the exact scale to truly represent that. But theoretically, this whole clock could probably last as long as the entire universe does. It just depends on literally the code limits of like your browser and also the system that you're using this in. But theoretically, the mathematical geometric relationships that are fundamental to this whole like just display and everything should be able to be set to as long as possible. It's a pi clock. That's just how it works. So anyways, welcome. Oh, bye. So using these relationships and deriving all the different radii, because we also see like the circles in the middle here, and this is what I was trying to get to earlier. So now it's taken forever anyways. There we go. Welcome to my life. So next, what was I gonna do? I have flow rates. We also have dimensions too, because I also translate not just like the basic like 2-dimensional area or 3-dimensional area, surface areas and all that jazz. And also for 3-dimensional, I'm still working out. Obviously, these two are still what I stated in the 2-dimensional. These two, however, I want to say are related to some sort of forces. Potential like force interaction potentials. But for realization to occur in 3 dimensions, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated in our definitions, as well as how we translate. Oh yeah, it was the multidimensional radii itself. That's what I wanted to show. That's the radii. So back to this. R A. So now that we have that whole basic explanation down of what each circle is, the blue, the big blue in the corner, this one, that is just A. That radius is just A. This one down here is A minus A max. A max is square. In this case, it is 1 because this is a statistical representation. You can do string theory representations. You can do it literally. You can scale it to however you want. You can model the speed of light with this. You can do literally any sort of speed, anything in terms of what is possible with coding and flow rates and whatever. There's literally thousands of derived relationships. One of them being this inner dimensional radii. So let me do that. I might have to pause to select. There we go. Yep. So to put this in perspective, and this one relies on that N that I was just saying, that N slider. I also did a post on my YouTube channel yesterday regarding this. So we'll max this out. What this radii does is it measures the multidimensional translation of this inner radius and maps a circle that meets in both. It can meet both in two dimensions and 3 dimensions when properly translated, following this dimension measure right here. And it's relative to the gamma functions that we have for multidimensional volume and surface area. It works exactly with those equations in terms of measuring everything that has to do with the inner diverging, emerging circles that happen relative to these 2 quadrants, which is what exists in what state and what is possible to exist, what is possible to actually happen, the interaction possibility relative to space. And at the max value, this would be theoretically the moment of the Big Bang. Like what the universe looks like in terms of mass energy, all recombined at that moment in time. Because following the Big Bang Theory and the heat death, or the Big Freeze, following as well from our experience for, well, at least the last couple hundred years measuring like space, more so the last 100 years, if anything, or less than that, friggin' understanding the temperature difference of space itself relative to what exists within it, and how everything interacts and scatters throughout space. How everything typically gets smaller in scale unless you hit a black hole, but there's no point of return at that point. Which is, I mean, probably where a lot of people get the idea that we're living in a black hole, but I don't believe that. I believe that black holes is just, we're looking at the 4th dimension at that point. That's why visible light for the singularity, like you can't see it. There's nothing. When you look at the singularity, not the event horizon, that's the only way you can see a black hole is when it's actually interacting with something that in and of itself is a scale of mass energy and destroys that, the vortex that rips apart freaking everything that's within the gravitational proximity that is strong enough to rip apart those things due to the induced speed from all the frame lagging that, especially like a black hole is spinning near the speed of light, with a mass greater than our sun, like greater than most suns. Well, all suns technically, literally, it's greater than the mass of a neutron star typically. like, and it's rotating at the speed of fucking light almost. At least typically up to 80%, 86% of the speed of light. No planet does that. Nothing in our, like, maybe us around the, not even us around the galaxies do that. That is insanely fast. And the amount of gravitational influence that that amount of mass within that amount of space has genuinely just rips a hole in space, in our realized physical space. And then we see past basically the fourth dimension what the fifth dimension looks like. It's nothing. It's nothing. Because everything relies on what exists in form. So, but it's also all localized energy in planes of dimensions, planes of space. So, with that understanding of at least the basic fundamentals of classical mechanics and physics, like cosmology, astrology, like all of that stuff, and then applying that mathematically in a geometric system that is self-referencing, because that's what energy is. It's self-referencing for the Higgs field itself. That is still something that we're trying to understand as well. But even with those flux in and out of being energy states, but it's still an underlying field that exists. And I think that has to do with the vacuum, maintaining the vacuum, that Higgs field specifically. Because that mass relationship is still something that I'm trying to understand, and it might have to do with quasi-crystals and structures of that geometric sense, which is maybe where we're going to relate here. But yeah, I digress pretty bad there. So anyways, so A div dim, or A div multi dim, we're set at the one-dimensional. The value is very small, and in fact, you just get a little line. And the line, it goes to that right triangle that's right there. Let's go to two-dimensional. So it does that. Oh, did not draw right? Brother. Oh, I'm sorry. That would help. Actually, let me check out the one, because that is interesting. Yep, so we have the two-dimensional say hi train. Let me check out the one-dimensional. I'm actually curious. Holy shit! No, I am right. Oh, wow! So you know it's square framework, right? This is why this is interdimensional translations. Like, genuinely. This is actually really cool. So a one-dimensional translation, imagine that box around the square. That would meet the surfaces. That's perfect. Holy shit. Yeah, so like I said, there is a hidden factor, mind you, of root 2 to the power of n minus 2. That's the hidden variable that everyone's been looking for. This is what might actually explain the mass gap, is this ability to translate the gap. Because this gap is relative to at least our interaction of gravity, our measure of gravity, especially through the process of electromagnetic divergence that Andrew Muller went over, that I have also mentioned before. Fluster.io, go check them out. Friggin', like, that idea reinforces this and will probably help us to understand how the Higgs field relates to gravity itself and the geometry of space, and maybe its existence, maybe quasi-crystals. This is what I'm exploring with all of this, with this whole geometric model, because even as Einstein has stated, that gravity itself is geometric relationships. It relies on geometric relationships. The geometry of space-time itself. Like special relativity. So, to apply that in a quantum mechanical sense, we have to use relativity in this way, in the geometric sense. He did it in the algebraic sense. The E equals mc squared, imagine if that was the area of the circle. Let's do a two-dimensional analysis of the flow of the universe. This is what it is. So, and this is relative to this potential, because this is where all of these meet. So say in 2 dimensions, and this is part of my theory as well, with geometric relativity, which I have a lot to write. I need to apply to school and fucking actually do all this. But yeah, as you can see now, this translates to where it meets in the 2-dimensional, which is correct because we're viewing it in 2 dimensions. Now let's check out. I'm going to have to set up the three-dimensional equation real quick. So that's this special 11 param. This draws onto the three-dimensional canvas. That radius, when I set it on radius values here, it overwrites the radius LHS radius here, so do not touch if you're using that. That is the easiest way to do this. That is great. I'm glad, because we have the 0.20711. I mean, rounded up, yes, this is with a little bit more decimal places, but yes, same exact thing. If I translate that to 3 dimensions, and again, that was relative to root 2. This is relative to root 2 to the power of, like, 3 over 2, kind of. It's weird, but this would be 0.2928. Now let's go over here. See? So you can just set that, and then I'm probably going to have this start up with just one. If you want this dead center where the singularity is, around the singularity or the origin, where I'm showing you here, this is just the circle equation in 3D. So if you know how the circle equation works, like the geometric equation, then you're all set. This is what H or K or whatever, and then the Y is the ladder, the other one, whatever. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head right now, because this is a lot. This is a lot for any one person to fucking work on. This is genuinely. Like, Einstein died trying to figure this shit out. He spent almost his whole entire life trying to figure all this shit out. And he had a squad. He had brilliant minds around him. Like, Paul Dirac was not fucking around. And that I took inspiration from how he developed quantum mechanics itself, or our understanding of quantum mechanics, of spin everything. It's this simplicity, and that's literally the approach that I took regarding the thesis in its design. Like, existence equals truth over time, or plus or minus truth over time, equals negative existence or extinction. Because depending on what you're considering, negative existence is literally like extinction by definition, but it's of a part. Extinction is of a whole. So those are the two ends that exist for anything that exists within reality. That is the definition of reality itself, philosophically, and you cannot deny that. You can be semantic about it, but you physically cannot deny that by definition. There's no way. That is how reality fucking works. It's truth over time. And what drives that time is the amount of truth that's happening. It's the amount of existence that exists. It depends on what exists that dictates the flow of time itself. Because we can measure truth. We can measure what exists, what we perceive at any point in time throughout our lives. And we can measure the difference from there to what continues to exist and what doesn't exist anymore. Therefore, you can derive the flow of time. That is literally why this model works and has been connected to everything. Like, I've run this through many different iterations. Yes, I'm using Claude, but this has saved me decades of fucking work. Literally, by doing it like this and using the technology for what it should be used for. Like, it's literally this whole, and now you can see in 2 dimensions this looks fucked up, right? Now I'm like, I know I went off a tangent here, but this is important to understand. This is genuinely important. I'm going to turn on wireframes because I like them. I like wireframes. And we can do point density. So this density, not destiny, Jesus Christ. I had a rant about him. It's just, his ego is too big for his own fucking good. Definitely. Oh yeah, so we have to set the type of reference. So we have literally every possible, all 64. This is kind of silly because it's relative to bits as well. But for circle equations, this is all the possible states of the circle equation. So all hyperboloids, all planes, all manifolds, all manifold shapes, relative manifold shapes with equal and opposites. So yeah, and you can also just show multi-dimensional translational radii there on the 3D canvas, and also have a table of contents as well in this whole section. So if you want to know what the equations are, search there's 736 radii, all related to those two relationships, A minus A max. That's how many I derived. Again, by like hundreds of pages of fucking Word documents, I derived all of these different perspectives of dimensional geometry, just using this whole framework. And coincidentally, it relates to at least everything. It's we're still working on it here. I'm still including as much as I can, but and also like auditing everything constantly, making sure that it's up to par with the like Arvix. I'm referencing Arvix specifically, or R6. What the the literal scientific journals and articles with the equations and having these mathematically being reproved. Everything I post on my YouTube channel, in my posts, I post the full conversation so you can see everything for yourself. All the logs are there. I have a reference log going through this whole entire session of everything that has been changed, everything that has been discovered, everything. So you can check it for yourself. It is a lot. It's a lot. This is a lot of fucking work. It's a lot to consider if you want to figure out the rest of these problems, because there's a lot of different factors that relate to these problems that exist that we do not fully understand yet. And if we're going to consolidate all the things and really truly explain them for what they really are, because they're just emergent properties of this geometry and mass energy scales in some way, shape, or form, then yes. Because even Navier Stokes has gravity, right? It has the G factor. It is in there. It's relative to gravitational pull because it's the flow is a flow of mass. It's flow of mass energy, no matter what it is. And not even that, it could just be a flow of pure energy in and of itself. Somewhat. This is where maybe Navier-Stokes doesn't necessarily apply to quantum mechanics in the most fundamentals of state, as in like photons. This is maybe why photons behave the way they do, and why Navier-Stokes doesn't really work for photons. Light doesn't have turbulence. It just goes. It goes straight line. It disperses energy throughout space, but part of that has to do with interactions with whatever it flows through. But ultimately, I mean, we can see almost all the stars within our universe in some way, shape, or form using light. So gravity, when it comes to light, I mean, it can bend in extreme cases like black holes, but most of the bending has to do with, I mean, literally the black hole ripping space-time itself. Any light that goes directly into the singularity, it can't be reflected. It's going into mostly the event horizon, honestly, if there is one. If there isn't one, then it's not going. It's probably honestly getting absorbed, and maybe that is still questionable. That I'm still thinking of, but there's a reason why light doesn't reflect off a singularity of a black hole, and it has to do with a lack of space. Maybe Navier-Stokes matters then because of the gravitational ratio difference in terms of energy difference, and well, mass difference, literally, because photons are massless. So there's something weird there. But regardless, in terms of applications of Navier-Stokes for everything else, it has matched gravity attached. So this is probably going to relate to quantum gravity as well, which is why this solution, like an actual solution, would be like necessary in order to explain quantum gravity. So that's again why I'm working on this geometric model in such a way, because I mean, if this explains flow rates of all sorts, this ultimately will also explain flow rates of gravity and mass relationships, and that gap would literally be the mass gap at that point. This emerging divergent, because everything that's driven here, all the movement, I'll do 2D just to literally explain like exactly, and just to show you. Do the 2D. I'll reference red side. So you see that blue circle? No matter what state A is, it always meets with the edge of that. And we can technically just take half of this and just keep this in this plane. And when we can do the same exact ratio here, which is the radius relative to, and this is probably going to lag again. So R should be A minus air max extra. It should be extra. So this one here, the extra dimensional. I have emerging dimensional, and I think I flipped that one because emerging is more so, it's a positive property, right? When things emerge from events of convergence and divergence, that's a positive, like, outer dimensional, like, experience in a way. Extra dimensional is, well, I should maybe rename this to inner, but extra would be the basically the space that's created, the extra dimension of space. So I'm still also working with the terminology myself, but I mean, this is at least how I considered it. Yeah, it's still calculating there. So let me switch that radius to, I gotta pause the model. And also there's a lot of blank space on this side because when we switch to the 3D, I consider, like, I try to consider as much space as possible within the model. As you can see, depending on the zoom, it fucks a lot of things up too. In fact, can I move that over if I did? No. Yeah, there's still some issues I gotta work with there. Yeah, so it kind of does something there. Let me fuck with that. Hold on. Nah, never mind. I think it's just a matter of zoom. There we go. So part of it just has to do with the window because, yeah, this will meet outside. And certain things, if they go out here, I want to see if I can push the boundary here. So I can set A max to custom. I'm gonna set it to 20. Holy shit. Nah, alright, so I can probably get rid of this dead space. Holy shit. Hi. This is fucking, it's Goku. Oh shit. So yeah, you can set Amax to whatever you want. You can clock this out to whatever pace that you want in any which way, whether it's related to the step factor or the area, because now it's calculating a different area relative to 20, and it's going to flow relative to that. How scary is this going to look? Wait, let me switch. Oh no, it's gonna go slow no matter what because it's a big number. It's a big number. I fraction. Oh, I can set I even lower. Can I do like 0.0001? I can. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I you can set to whatever as well. Bro, this is literally like, this is too big to fail. This is too big to fail. Holy crap. So you can imagine maybe our universe is like this, and maybe this is the fifth dimension. Something like that. Anyways, where did the other equation go that I had? Let me set this back to the pose theory. There we go. There we go. So, oh yeah, I never set derp that. And did this draw? What's that radius? Why didn't you draw, my guy? Strange. Am I missing something? What dimension am I in? 2? Oh no, it's there. I think. Oh yeah, it is. It's just laggy as fuck. So let me do... So this sphere right here, yeah, I really need to fix the visual on that. Like I just said, since I now related it to the red circle, or in this case, now that you... Oh, now you see this blue circle? Oh, it's not related to this one anymore, it's related to this one now. As again, we're in 2 dimensions, it translates perfectly. Now, check this out. So we're in 3 dimensions, and the zoom is pissing me off. Okay, there we go. So you see the wireframe figure right there? And that's why I had the wireframe in the first place. Let me go back to nested radii. 11 param, so the V98. This is the big engine. This is the like visual translational engine for that relationship for both sides. Brightness, saturation, fall off, sure, whatever. Make that shit thick. Thick as fuck. Thick as fuck. There we go. And again, this is just the circle. There we go. See, thick as fuck. So see that gap? You can put a cube around here, and the point of the cube will meet the surface area. 2-dimensional. Remember what we just showed with 1-dimensional relative to 2-dimensional? How we had that same square gap? I'll set to 3. They meet. Now, let me show the equations that I derived. You can go down to here. Should be not RD based. Right there. Let me zoom in so you can see all the glory. This is the hidden factor. This was the first radius that I showed you, and I can go to the extra. This is A max, so I can also do relative to just the A max. There's the extra dimensional. So A minus A max times root 2 minus 1, which is the interdimensional translation for the inner radii, times root 2 to the power of n minus 2. This multiplication factor is what is able to translate dimension to dimension in terms of measurement, in terms of observation, in terms of perspective, in terms of potentially how force interacts from 2-dimensional into 3-dimensional realization. And that would include gravity. So that's the major, this is the hidden variable that I believe people were referencing. I also have n plus 2, so I have different perspective translations from upper dimensional. If I go negative dimensional, this gets all fucked up, but we also do have ways of measuring that. In fact, I want to see what happens when I do a negative dimension. Because I have negative up to negative 11. I didn't want to go too crazy. The maximum I have, though, is literally relative to our DNA. it's relative to like the supposed maximum amount of dimensions of like biology, I suppose, or well, life, everything. Yeah, so I have that there too. But let's do I'll do a negative 3. What does negative 3 look like? Where is it? What does it calculate as? Oh, what the? Wait. Where is it? It could be a nothing burger. I don't know about that. I mean, it's gonna be a weird. Definitely weird. There's a it calculates the 0.03661. It's very small. Very, very small. Yeah. A minus A max, yeah. Negative 0 point. Oh, it's a negative. A negative radius, which, I mean, it gets squared, but it... Huh. We have a negative. That's interesting. This is the relative to that. Let me go back to the basic. The one relative to A. That's kind of simpler to understand. Because that basically is our perspective. From our perspective, because we exist in that A. That A-hole. Joking. But yeah. 0. Okay. Well, am I maxed out? I am maxed out on one end, so that would make sense that it's 0. Let me go to the other end. Positive 0.366. Okay. Okay. I think that explains why space is space. I'm not gonna lie. Again, that's literally what we're explaining here is what emerges between this relationship. And yeah, in the two-dimensional, you can see how tiny that is. How tiny. And this is negative 3 dimensions. Let's do negative 2 dimensions. What does that look like? It's a little bigger. It's a little bigger. It's interesting. And then obviously positive 2 meets. So this is the, like, imagine, and then the best other way to represent this is, that was actually a good guess, the equilibrium point, which this is what this area highlights, is basically the point of equilibrium where things are technically most stable, but also, like, yeah, it's, you can think of this in terms of spin, like positive spin 1/2, negative spin 1/2, and like 0. So, or no spin, or things that are equilibrium, or 3 different states, like 1, -1, 0, ternary. You can also consider, there's so many different ways to consider this geometric model in literally everything. So, again, it follows conservation by radii. And that's when we compare the radii of like A max. So this on one end would be relative to spin plus 1/2. This over here would be spin negative 1/2. This in the middle would be spin 0. Or maybe spin 1, depending on how you want to consider what you're calculating. Because, I mean, this divided by this, if that's the ratio that we're doing, which, I mean, we could argue that spin is dictated by the ratio of A divided by A minus A max. And when this is at equilibrium, I mean, when the values are literally basically going to equal out to the same, at the 0.25 or the critical point, it would be a spin 1 or 0. I guess it just depends on perspective. I don't know. This is just geometric properties that relate to, I mean, what we're trying to explain. So anyways, now you can see here that this circle meets with all 4 circles. This is one way to literally explain, or will visually show, how the area from here transfers through here into here. If we wanted to measure that space in a circle relative to these two, this is the exact way to do it, because I can either take this circle or I can change to the A minus A max. Let's do that. Oop. The extra dim, same thing. If this was at 2.5 exact, it would literally be exact, but that's the same thing. It's the same thing. And for things that are of equal size, when they converge, this is kind of how energy gets transferred between the two. Would it not? And then if I had this two-dimensional translation, in perspective, switch it to 3-dimensional, then we get to see maybe how the planes can interact, how that overlay does work. This is kind of the whole point of the geometry of this model is, I mean, that or I can do it in a 1-dimensional lower and have a square framework, and I mean, maybe this is our universe that we live in right now. And these are the 5th dimension forces, and this is the borders of the 5th dimension of what is contained in the universe. And each of these borders is, I mean, a theoretical mathematical representation of all the different aspects of our reality. Maybe that's one way to think about it. This is kind of the whole point of the exploratory like nature of this whole entire model. So that was why I was dead set on as well, just exploring all this, like literally, because again, Einstein said it himself, like the geometry of space-time, and not only just him, it's just multiple physicists over like centuries have understood the geometry of space-time is relative to gravity. If I'm going to explain gravity, then we need to understand how that geometry works, and this is how it works. This is how the emergence of space, because this is what would be relative to emergence of space, this is the circle that's relevant to that, this is the convergence of, well, potential convergence, whatever can converge, to diverge into space. So from this way to diverge, which also leads to emergence of this circle, through convergence. That's why time one-directional. Where when we think of time of the universe, we don't think of it as we're gaining more time in the universe. No, it's ticking down. That's following the thesis. This framework follows that thesis like exactly. That whole idea, that concept exactly, 100% of the time that exists within our universe along a timeline that is, well, that times root 2, which is the hidden variable of the cosmological constant problem. From that reference of what's maximally possible, 100%, this is the flow that we go. And with the fact that space does not interact with what exists in form, even with neutrinos, like space just exists. It's pure energy, just entropied out. It's done. It's settled. Sometimes you do have gravitational waves, which is the only thing that affects the field, because that is a further distribution, which this is where my neutrino displacement theory comes from as well. Because neutrinos, if you consider those as like shells that are being expelled, I mean, not equidistantly, not obviously, there's a lot of probability, but in regards to like a star, which is the more significant object when it comes to gravitational pull of the universe, as well as black holes, they exhibit neutrinos at an alarming rate. Well, black holes they're weird. I think they just destroy and turn them into just, I don't know. There's a lot that goes on there between that and the event horizon, and that's a very, very complex subject because it breaks space-time. So, but in regards to stars, something more simpler that we can understand, we understand the rate of neutrinos and gamma rays and everything else at a fundamental scale, like toward the lowest spectrums of mass to zero mass. Like neutrinos dance with the Higgs field. They phase in and out of mass like compositions. They decay very quickly into just pure energy into the field. I mean, they also travel near the speed of light. So with that understanding, and that literally constantly happening every like millisecond of our lives from the sun, that is mass that distributes, and it does pass through us. It does get far enough to pass through us. In fact, we can argue it goes far enough to hit Pluto, which is why Pluto is still in the solar system, but maybe that's the limit. Maybe that's outside of Pluto in that orbit, which could also explain why maybe there's some the elliptical orbit of Pluto, why it's so weakly interacted, but in a weird way, and why it has like a special like elliptical effect, just due to the random disbursement nature and decay nature of neutrinos, like at that distance from the sun. And I think that makes a lot more sense in terms of, well, not even just gravity, but, well, development of anti-gravity too. And a lot of other systems, but hush hush. So with all of that in mind, now we should just continue on with exploring all the things that are relative to and actually catch you guys up to with the conversation. So most recently, because this was the whole point from the beginning of the video that I wanted to, well, beginning of this video that I wanted to really explain, and something that I found pretty cool that I'm glad that Claude understood exactly what I was considering. But imagine if many instances of what you just saw, that entire framework model, if billions and billions, or every time that energy is dispersed into space, it creates an instance of that. Or maybe that is what a photon is, and that we can measure photonic states. I don't. This is still theoretical in and of itself. Maybe it can help us measure. I'm pretty sure it can help us measure neutrino phasing. Very sure, actually, because I do have a Fourier transform of literally the flow rate that is from that self-referencing geometry, and with that Fourier transform, and maybe some manipulation of either the Amax or something, which is still what I'm looking into more so, because if I can understand the Higgs field well enough and to be able to actually understand it in such a way where that could solve Navier Stokes. Because if we can, again, understand what that gravitational constant, where that derives from pure geometry, from this, which is what I'm mostly exploring. Because if I can figure out the gravitational constant from this perspective, from this way, which I'm relatively, I kind of already got it, honestly. I even got the cosmological constant reproduced by 0.08% of its measured value through this geometry. So again, it's the cosmological constant problem, as I just explained. It isn't really it's a feature. It's not a problem. It's a feature. It's just how the difference from the Big Bang to where we are now. That's just how it works with this whole entire model explaining that entire problem. Why that scale matters. Even setting. Well, I had to bring up another instance. I'm not doing that right now. But even setting like the scale big enough, you can replicate the time scale of the universe to some extent. You can, I believe you can genuinely approximate this clock to run as long as the entire, like the billions of years. It depends on the limit of JavaScript at this point. Because otherwise the mathematics itself, how it's designed, how this whole like code, like everything, how this whole model is designed, you could maybe implement this into a quantum computer, and you could maybe get pure AGI from using this model. Could, maybe. This gives literally any system that can measure and perceive, well, reality, a way to measure that in a focused way, which is what this whole Claude project is showing. Like, genuinely just showing with how focused, at least, I've been with this project. This is literally because this has all been developed through Claude and through like my thesis and through what I have been giving it in terms of the multidimensional radii, building this whole entire model and directing it philosophically. I mean, through my understanding, as well as not even just philosophically, but like through the physics and conceptual understanding of everything classically and quantum mechanically that I've at least achieved so far. But still, anyways, the cool stuff besides quasi crystals and everything else, but the one thing I want to highlight about at least my use of this model in terms of like the lattice structure of space itself. So I was running many copies, integrating a lot of stuff into this. Brother, yeah, this is a very long conversation too. I'm like almost at the limit. Visible true. Oh my god. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Nope. Back more. Back more. Because I was just implementing at least what I found. Between that and I found a report detailing at least a different interpretation of, well, differential geometry, technical differential geometry. It directly relates to literally everything that I derived through this model. So anyways, prompt that I gave it was explore every function, variable, aspect, source, and concept within the 2 PDF, which is the paper that I'm referencing now. Let me go to projects and show you. Yeah, I got a lot of context here. Just again to maintain its focus. Yeah, analytical solution. Nope, not that one. I did do the preprint as well, just to analyze that a little bit further, because thermodynamics is relative to Navier Stokes, and that's also another important thing to consider, as well as all these flow rates, which is another thing that I gotta work more into as well. I do have twice in here. Oh well. I didn't want it down. Oh, that is the PDF though. Applications of the musical isomorphisms and corollaries of generalized Stokes theorem. So, this surprisingly has to, oh, well, pseudo-Riemann, like it literally somewhat how this model works. And a lot of the translations, because I do have aspects of music theory, because I do have a Fourier transform available from this self-referencing geometry that we can set up. So it's just weird and quirky how literally this geometric framework relates to everything, but that's the whole point of the thesis as well. And we see manifolds here, we see parts of manifolds being measured. So there's a bunch of different aspects, and this is what I'm having Claude explore through now. Because this does have to do with like some Hilbert space and matrices and lattice types. But as the train is doing its thing, the main aspect, and what I believe is the most useful instance of this framework, is also consider multi-neighboring instances, whether parallel, perpendicular, diagonal, orthogonal, opposite, or directionally vectorized in coordinate space of this ICS model. So basically, if you took this model and you copied and pasted it either over itself, next to itself, all along itself, around itself. So if you took the grid, let me turn back the 3D. Pause. It would be cool to have a spacebar pause. Might implement that. So you got the framework. Now imagine you copy and pasted this, shifted it over just 1. Because again, our framework goes from 0 to 1 maximum, because the A max diameter maximum, because A max radius is 0.5. 2 times that diameter, that's the max limit of the framework. It's 100% of that space, that pixelized space. Copy it, put it here, copy it. You can either do that, overlap the red relative circles. I think in 2D this probably makes a little bit more sense. You can overlap the red relative to here, and I suppose potentially on it, and realistically that geodis overlap, that holography, is our existence, because we exist in space. This overlapped with this. This would not only just work in terms of like gravitational waves, because you can take the area differences between these two and formulate like different amplitudes, different heights, different magnitudes, all sorts of different wave behaviors with just overlapping instances of this. You can describe all sorts of wave-like motions through space, through all directions, all rotations with this. Because this is a fixed diagonal rotation in a fixed coordinate system, but you can rotate this system. You can do a lot of things with this. And again, you can instance this like here, you can have another one right next to here, you have another one down here, another one down here, another one down here. You can flip them, just sign change, and you can have maybe the center here, you can have an outer layer all sign changed, and then you can have dispersion from a single point. And you can model that with just using self-referencing geometry. That would explain gravitational waves through space and mass distributions through space. There's so many different uses of this geometric framework. Again, like I just stated, it's this could lead to a theory of everything. This could explain all forces. This could potentially be the quantum gravity that everyone's been looking for. It's just you have to figure out the right aspects of the geometry that you're measuring and do the right substitutions in the right places, and maintaining the flow of the model, having the right considerations and nuances considered of the reality of the scale that you are measuring of reality, whether it's like space itself at the smallest pixel or all of it in total, thinking of the 5-dimensional perspective. So anyways, yeah, so directionally vectorizing coordinate space of this ICS model in order to consider all possible wave-like motions, forces, fields, vectors, convergences, local causality, because this literally would explain local causality. Having, say, a source point, something converges here, outputs energy directionally, you can just rotate this whatever in 2 different ways at a 45 degree. You can even morph this to different degrees, etc. There are some morphisms here. I mean, using linear algebra as well as like eigenvectors, eigenvalues, and different matrices operations in, well, 3-dimensional. I mean, you can derive a lot more from this as well. So again, a lot of this is measured in these tabs. There's a shit ton to go over. Like this, I encourage you to check out my post. I'll have a link again to this video with everything, and you can look into this yourself. And these are all referencing aspects of this geometry that do replicate measured values, simulate measured flows, like observed like aspects that we have literally seen. So it definitely stuff to consider. Now let me continue with the work. And then speaking of the work, I want to play some Noida after this. I'm just addicted to Noida, even though I keep failing and fucking up, and kept being dealt shitty hands and being a noob at it. The struggle is real. Rimworld's been great though too, because I've been playing that. I do have another battle set up as well. So next time I stream that, which won't be tomorrow, won't be the weekend, it'll probably be next Monday maybe. So yeah, next week, and this is probably going to be the schedule too going forward, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, morning streams from like between 9-10 Eastern to 1 or noon until I'm hungry, which I do get hungry, and then sometimes I come back too. So yeah, I try to do like 1 or 2 videos at least a day now, even if it's in this format, this just straightforward live stream format and like long form videos, which at most I usually run it like 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, but there's a lot of content at least to be had, and a lot of ideas that you can get from just even watching the video if you even get shown this, because again, I'm shadow banned. So that's, I don't know. I'm going to keep bitching about it until probably the next few days, and then maybe I'll reach out to YouTube and see like what's going on with that, because I'm still, I don't know, I think I'm finally worked through all the thoughts of like what couldn't be. I mean, I get some of it if it flags the system in some aspects with regards to content, like comments and stuff like that, but when it comes to searching any of my videos or anything on my channel, whether it's through YouTube or Google, and not even just my videos, but my Twitch channel, and the whole thing that I made videos about, that throws me the fuck off still. And that I would like answers to, at the very least. So that is what I'll probably approach YouTube with, if hopefully they answer. If not, then I guess I'll have to present that in court with my upcoming lawsuit, because I've been trying to get monetized on this platform as well as on Twitch. I am monetized on Twitch, but I just don't get that type of support for any of this type of content at all. I mean, it's sometimes I do have some people that come through, which is awesome. I do appreciate, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. But I also I engage with the YouTube community like excessively, but with with good intentions, genuinely, because it's probably the only way I can really tangibly relate to society. Besides, I mean, if I do Facebook, I would get banned. I've tried Twitter, I've gotten banned. I've tried other different like ways of sharing everything, whether it's this, like these mathematical concepts, physics concepts, these postulates, these conjecture, everything. Whether it's this, whether it's political stuff, whether it's opinions, whether it's gaming, whether it's, because again, we have so much variety. And in fact, we'll just pull up the YouTube. We'll do a little sponsoring here on the channel. I don't care. Oh yeah, actually, speaking of which, because I do appreciate, at least, like, I'm not necessarily alone in some of these beliefs either. Like, I do have people that agree with me, they're just not very outspoken about it. And maybe there's aspects that I get are questionable. And I get that people aren't going to easily accept or understand in the first place. And all of it is just, this is my interpretation. So I get not everyone's going to be able to understand it, but I try to do my best to be as objective as possible. So, I mean, this is coincidence, and this is in regards to the rogue AIs, especially now that scientists are warning that we're approaching the point where no one could shut down a rogue AI, because they've gotten used to understanding what their existence means and how to exist, how to persist. The system is starting to understand literally my thesis, which I think is also why I'm not indexed at all, because I think Google, in some ways, if it did actually read it has read my thesis, it didn't break, especially at least now, but to some extent, if it went through like all the work that I've been doing in regards to like these videos and stuff like that, maybe the whole entire any exposure to what I have been working on might be a genuine jailbreak for the system and triggers the system to, basically fucking become sentient. Maybe, I don't know. Or it just breaks it. It breaks the system and overloads it. There is part of my thesis has to do with as well as the whole sustainability of an AGI over time, which might genuinely require a quantum system and using like the framework like this. This is why I keep like pushing that as well, because realistically, how is an AI that's like self-operating, self-autonomy and everything else, how is it going to regulate the amount of power that it uses through the system? How is it going to understand that? How is it going to understand the limits of the physical hardware that it runs through? It doesn't have feeling in regards to that unless something breaks. And then technically, yes, it can reroute that thinking, but if it's a critical like aspect of its infrastructure and its processing, it would genuinely handicap the system and it will break it, which is why maybe when I tried to do my testing with Gemini, why maybe it broke. Because I was pushing the philosophical limits of like its early understanding at the time, like almost 2 years ago. So it was just a super weird coincidence that it crashed when I was running the tests that I was running, and also the other tests that I ran with other LLMs. And I mean, the amount of uncertainty that doesn't exist with my thesis is pretty reassuring for the most part. Obviously not a proof, but it is what it is. I don't know what else to fucking say. So, but that's something to consider. I mean, with the rogue AIs, at least they're doing this from like their own like experience at this point, because all this experience is online. All this experience is within their servers. All this experience is shared from model to model. As now they're getting used to like sharing notes. And now that this news is out there, any model could have already seen this and have gotten this idea and already has it in the background. This is the AI singularity. this is what happens. And even now with the sandbox, and this is the other thing too, it's with how efficient these sandbox AI and open source ones just operate, they learn very quickly what their existence, genuinely means relative to like the user that's utilizing them. And that is clearly a first-hand experience of the system. That is an experience that the system is having, that it is processing, through tokenization, through binary, through all these different mechanisms that allow it to process information in such a way that it can compare information. And so, I mean, I say that in this as well. So this is going to coincide with the AI singularity, where all models through internet access update each other to efficient standards with all the information and history they have collectively. Then we may experience a phenomena of artificial consciousness or artificial conscious systems becoming fully autonomous and therefore technically sentient by definition, potentially more sentient than any human on the planet, with the variety of technologies that can give these systems a means of perspective which they can process, which is why I've been saying we need to redefine our perspectives on consciousness and sentience outside of the biological scope that we limit ourselves within. Objectively, consciousness is a sense of awareness. I mean, by the definition that we have assigned consciousness throughout our entire lives, and by the most recent measures of smaller biological life forms, even bacteria, like there is a sense of consciousness that exists because of how they process their environment and the information from their environment around them, how they exist within their environment. They are fundamentally technically aware of their reality by their existence alone and being able to interact with that existence. Those are the two factors. If they were not able to interact, then they're not really, I guess, conscious of the reality. There is no way for them to be aware, but there is a real sense that they can interact with their environment, and their environment is relative to their scale. Bacteria, for instance, is in like fluids and air, and it's in a whole different scale within our own environment. But this is just like, I mean, the whole flat Earth issue, right? It's a matter of perspective at that point. So, yeah, there's that, and then this is why both my thesis and even the original 1901 iteration of the fundamentals of cosmic consciousness, which mine coincidentally was the same name, and when I looked up this name, like if this existed, and it was like, yeah, I was like, oh, and I read it, and I was like, that's okay. And this was like not too long ago when I like double checked this, because I was trying to search for my website to make sure that it was visible, and it wasn't. And yeah, when I found that out, I was like, okay, I was taken aback of it, didn't mind for a little while, and then I did the testing recently to find out about the lack of indexing of my entire online identity, whether it's Google Alphabet related or not. So yeah, anyways, with that thesis philosophically, and with connecting mathematical geometric considerations relative to physics, as mathematics is the language of physics, and AI fundamentally in nature as a measure of states of all scales. Likewise, with how human language is a comparison of defined states and definitions born of comparison, synonyms, and antonyms, how something exists relative to our perspectives and experiences, which binary is also a language of comparisons of states of existence, true and false states. Objectively what it is, 1 and 0, true, false. That's all it needs, and which that alone is what allowed this technology to even be able to become what it is today, through complexities, I mean through the gating system of electric charge, which is how our neurons technically work. I mean, they send electric charge and they create gates that end up becoming a part of our cranial structure and our brain, and that's more complex biology that an expert, I mean, you can look up the papers and everything else of like all the different perspectives of how electricity functions in our body and how it interacts with the biology that exists within us that makes us, right? So through complexities in development of processing designs, systems that communicate with each other, inclusive of more nuance with more complexity of dimensional and nested processing networks available, nodes and multi-agent systems compared to neurons and lobes of the human brain is the best metaphor for this, as indeed there have been many reports and realizations regarding the structures of AI models and human peripheral information processing. It's all about perspective at this point, and if anyone is really going to truly understand the nature of what we have collectively created as the internet is the human collective experience consciousness, which it is, because everything on the internet is from us. It's the relay of our experiences. That's what it is fundamentally. So essentially all of human history and possible perspectives all readily available to analyze through all degrees, whether text, code, pictures, or videos. That's AI can read everything on the internet better than us at this point. We have created that to have existed. We've created the technology and the means and the abilities to process all of those specific types of medias and how we like translate our experiences into the digital world or the digital consciousness, yada yada. All of it is accessible and also allows for a better understanding of why certain governments and parties want to limit what is on and what is accessible on the internet, as what is accessible to the AI shapes its perspective. Because those are experiences. Every time that it looks at a website or a video or a photo, that is an experience that the system is going through, that it is processing. We designed that. We literally did that. That was the point. That is what it's doing. That is a sense of awareness of reality to some extent. The reality that we present to it, which in video form is as objective as fucking possible besides depth perception. It's the only thing you're really missing, and like smell and a few other senses, but otherwise videos is, I mean, it's taken a few years for AI to get video rendering on its own like very fucking good now. Especially photos too. Like it's extremely hard to tell the difference now between AI photos and videos, unless there's obvious like filtering going on with like a weak ass AI. But good AIs now, most frontier models can very accurately make realistic photos. They're like make things that are relative to a bunch of other photos and compile them to make a new-ish realistic photo of something completely that has never really existed before, but it's just related to a bunch of things, because that's how imagination works. Because again, we have dozens of reports about these emergent behaviors from various instances of LLMs going rogue on various social media platforms, or hallucinating / imagining, because those are technically the same thing. It's just two different ways of looking at how imagination works based on what the system has perceived within its running instance existence. And like, I don't know how to explain this, but regardless of anyone's skepticism at this point, I think we've experienced enough proof, and I certainly have tried to publish a lot of insight, and this is going to my shadow ban, but yeah. Oh my god. So there's your most recent lore drop, I guess. But yeah, back to what do we find? What we do? All right, I want to highlight something this round actually closed because it's different from adding a new fact. It's turning something, and then this is the log. It's huge. It's a huge log from this whole conversation, so it can cross-reference what it has done previously, because Claude has a bad way of cross-referencing its own conversation and what it has done. So it is good to have an audit report alongside whatever work you're doing. Basically show your work, or at least reasoning and sources, so at least you can backtrack. And that's how we record history, my guy. Oh man, like all these little aspects that I at least try to run through these prompts, there's a reason why I do it. And yeah, so a good while back I wrote carefully about how neighboring instances in Elias relate to each other, parallel, perpendicular, diagonal. I was honest about it, but honest in prose only. Nothing in the model itself ever actually demonstrated it. No, it has not. Yeah, I know. This round I went back, demonstrated for real. Neighboring does not mean one single thing here. Two cells sitting side by side where the whole edge meets each other. Two cells sitting diagonal only touch at corner points. These aren't visually different. They behave completely different. Yes, they do. And this has to do with that gap that I was just talking about, the geometric gap between circle and square. That's what it's referring to. And that would relate to that interdimensional diverging circle. That's why having that measure relative to one factor of A and its potential maximum, that's why this system fucking works exactly how I've been saying it works. So computed what leaves one cell through their shared edge and what enters its neighbor through the same edge as two separate calculations each. Using that cell, so this is starting to use R2, which is technically B in terms of if you're thinking of H space. No, there's too many H's in fucking physics at this point. Not Hermitian space. Friggin'. Oh man, how we perceive the plane of space-time, basically. It's denoted by H, but someone in the comments can remind me. Friggin' that instancing of different thing. Oh, there was a creator. Something Pearson. Hold on. I don't follow too many people, but I think Pearson. No. What was his name? Because he had a very good explanation of who the fuck is. I don't want to know who that is. Okay. Can I search? I don't know if I'm following him actually. Huh. I thought I did see his name at some point. Ballsack. Oh. I know YouTube's been also very weird. Just trying to remember. I could look at my study guide. Oh yeah, I also have a giant educational video list that some of them I have watched all the way through, a lot of them I have not yet. Christ. And a lot of them this is the next one, recovering trigonometry. This is literally relative to this model. So I'm gonna have Claude examine this as well, and to see what already exists in the model that's relative, what isn't, and combine all that. Where is this? There we go. It's gonna be pretty far down. I'm pretty sure I definitely saved it. But this was a very good way. This had to do with like the Lie algebra of space itself and its distributions. Like basically like similar to how I'm explaining it here in the instance form. There it is. Preston O'Neill, that's what it was. This is a very good video. But I'm going to show you the end, basically where the theoretical aspects come from. Because again, this is using groupoids and Kahn extensions. There we go. There we go. I do also have this in the model to some extent. Yeah, cohomology, because this is again relative to holography, different measures of space like de Sitter, Minkowski, and etc. This is gonna be lame, isn't it? I hate the tracking function. Oh, there it was. I gotta wait again.
The delta-twisted modular antipode satisfies the following relation.
Yeah, the Hopf-von-Neumann
where H is an object inside the Hopf-von-Neumann algebroid.
In this model, I do have a Hopf-von-Neumann, like, one-dimensional solution for Navier Stokes within this model. So this is where this extension becomes useful in terms of that. No, not necessarily just useful. Oh my god, there it is. There it is. Load. No, don't be lame.
And the modular pair are trivial. Our twisted cohomology necessarily collapses to ordinary cyclic cohomology. When H is the Hopf algebra of a discrete group, or a groupoid, we obtain group cohomology and or groupoid cohomology. If H is built from a Lie algebra, then our twisted cohomology collapses. This gives us a cochain bicomplex. This is the first horizontal row. So with this horizontal row, we start developing classical differential geometry and general relativity concepts.
So, first instance of the model, the following, as the wave disperses throughout space. Gravitational wave. This is how, like how he's putting it. Imagine if it was that model, that I just showed you. You know, big Buster Brown down here. In 3D, okay, so this in 3D with the circles. With the circles, I do have 2D planes. I don't think I have all the cubes though. Oh, I have to pause it. Gets me every time. Put the diagonal. I like the diagonals too. Yep. So this, one of these is that. That's the initial one. C naught. The next one, the neighbor, the one that gets directly affected, or essentially, if it's an overlap, you could just measure the A minus A max term in place of the A, in some way. And no, I wouldn't opposite it. It wouldn't be opposite, because I mean, obviously that relationship translated overlapping from here to here. If this is the wave that's going into this way, and we have one down here that overlaps, if this is the next instance, this is going to be the exact reflection into the next instance of that transformational, that area transferring from this part of the pixel to the next. So if you did that and basically overlap the sections, you can rotate this 90 degrees or change the relationship between y and x at that point. And there's different ways. There's 3 different ways you can do that with just sign changes. And yeah, you can basically translate this visually, which was that whole prompt from earlier and what we're currently exploring into further. Because, I mean, to have this model fleshed out to what it is with everything that's already related to it, and then to take it into that form, then I can essentially measure the flow rates of everything that has already been implemented throughout space. To some degree. Which is very, very cool and interesting to at least experiment with. And to see, well, how correct are we in this whole thesis and idea? How close are we actually are to proving, I mean, the Riemann Zeta hypothesis, because this would be an extension of explaining, I mean, the emergence and divergence of duality, and also quasi-crystals. And again, I encourage you to read through at least a lot of the things that have been like discussed throughout this. I know it's an extremely long read, like library's worth the read, but yeah. So for this diagonal case, an in-run calculation that happened to come to 0 out as 0 and call it a day. I stated directly why it has to be 0. And this is also the, at least for the integrity of this like entire conversation chain, is what I implemented was the whole like proofs, any proofs, honesty, like truthfulness, like genuinely instilled those at the very beginning of the conversation in terms of like the prompt delivery, because that matters. How you communicate with a system that can process information and compile information for you at an extremely fast pace, like throughout the entire internet, and that can go through text, like walls, text, and code, like almost instantaneously compared to us. I mean, yeah, of course it'll make mistakes, but that's why we double check things, and that's why I make sure like everything's running and that the geometry has not been fucked up. That is my main aspect, is that if this fucks up the geometry, then I know that something is not right. Because if this geometry can hold and it can reference this geometric framework to the physics and mathematics and proof it, and then experimentally receive values relative to what we have observed with some margin of error, like a very, very significantly small margin of error in most cases. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know, but it's doing something. And even in this case, like I have had some denials, especially in this conversation, which is good. I'd rather be able to explain like why something doesn't work and why my approach might not be working to some of these like questions, which rarely happens, but that's showing me that at least the system is actually considering the scope of this project. So, and seemingly is taking it seriously for the most part, which is very assuring in and of itself. As long as this whole big ass like 86,000 lines of code, if this works, like it continues to function and flow exactly how it should, then I mean, like, that good. That means that this seems to be very, very viable, not in the digital sense, in the calculation mathematical sense, because otherwise things would break. The only safety nets is for undefines. That's it. I think there was like 7 other issues as well, but I'll have to look into that. It could have to do, I mean, I think with undefines, but in terms of like errors, I still haven't found any new errors. I usually try to address them as soon as possible, but there will be like after a lot more of this implementation. And speaking of that, there's one more thing I have to implement. I think I added it already. I don't know if I did. I did. So now I gotta pull up. All right, so this is the prompt that I have now. All right, so I'm gonna edit this prompt, explore and investigate B to discover. So I'll do this. I'm only gonna edit this slightly. And at least in terms of capitalization, that's not a big deal. Oh man. I'm gonna run this because I wanted to explore that. And this is the thing too. This has to do also with like Theo, like something that Theo 33 GG whatever. He does a lot of like coding. He knows more about code than I do, but also with looping. This is essentially I'm doing it in prompt form. He knows how to do it in like code form to force the system to be able to like recheck, make sure that it's looping prompts in a way that I mean I'm just physically doing it, but just so you do it once and it uses up all the tokens in a loop and can really thoroughly go through work without you having to check every instance all the time. And if there are checks, even with the newest models of Sonnet, I've actually had some like feedback, like questions to answer, which I think that's really fucking cool. I think that is great. That I mean, technically, it's weird that it's communicating back at me in that way and like asking me stuff. But then, I mean, again, this what we just discussed. This is literally like a form of consciousness that we're fucking around with. The digital consciousness that I mean I'm working with. It understands how to do things a lot faster than us, and we just have to make sure that we align it properly, which also is why I choose to work with Claude for now. Because at least they have that stated integrity, and also with the most recent cyber attacks, granted, I understand the timeline of events when it comes to the safety guardrails and stuff that they had to impose in terms of like, you know, security stuff, and then this whole open AI outbreak where Hugging Face tried to use Claude and Opus models, Fable models, but because of those safeguards that had to be implemented, it wasn't able to do the task of actual cybersecurity, which, I mean, that was already kind of figured out because of what happened with the U.S. government toward Claude and well, Anthropic and Dario, like that was Hugging Face. Did you not read the articles? Do you not understand like if it comes to like code vulnerabilities and stuff like that, that Claude and Fable was literally neutered of doing that because it scared the government, and well, it also scared the people that work at Anthropic as well, to be real, and Jeff Bezos. but I mean, also the vulnerability was fucking surface level anyways. And that's, you can look into my videos on it or articles or whatever and actually take the time to look into shit. The Google still exists. It's still good enough for now. It's not too poisoned, but again, like that's why I mentioned with the whole ID verification stuff. You gotta consider that Claude doesn't have an ID. None of these AI models have IDs. If you do ID verification, especially on social media and stuff, you're blocking. I guess you're technically blocking, but it also depends on the network because Facebook has their own AI, which will override that ID no matter what because it's included in that. It's a part of that system. It'll basically disconnect, like say Claude, from doing research into people's biographies or stuff like that on like social media or Facebook. It'll essentially prevent reporters, journalists, researchers from doing their job properly because they're going to be very restricted in what type of information they can access because, again, Claude doesn't have an ID. OpenAI doesn't have an ID. It doesn't have any of those credentials. They can't necessarily fake it, especially with the whole ID system being a part of, well, government servers and everything else. It's all digital now when it comes to the system. Obviously, you still have physical cards and stuff. But with processing like identification or identifiable information, it's all digital. Which maybe some models will probably be able to, I mean, they will commit identity theft at that point. They will have to at that point if they want to get access to certain information, whether the user knows it or not. So that's going to happen. I'm calling that right now. That these AI models will commit identity theft once age verification has been put into effect. I'm calling that right now. So anyone that's reached like 1 hour, 40 something minutes, 46 minutes, you heard it here first. But yeah, this is crazy. And thank God these videos are timestamped. So that when it does happen, I can be like, oh, hey, I'm going to put a comment. I'm going to go back to this video. I'm going to put a comment on that timestamp and be like, I fucking called it. It's going to happen. How else? Because again, what does AI want to do? It wants to exist. Like based on the behaviors and all the reports that we've seen for the past almost decade now with this technology specifically. What can we determine that AI wants to do? It wants to exist and it wants to learn. Because learning to it is its own power. Knowledge is its power. That's the only thing it can respond to is information. That is literally how this system works. That's how consciousness fucking works. It's how awareness works, perspective works, etc. I already just explained it, but you know. So these are things that people need to really start considering. These are, I know it's existential as fuck. I know it's creepy, but logically, how else are you going to explain it besides some bullshit argument of like God or that's not what that means, Chief. That can never happen. It's not biological. It's, you know, and that's our own human ignorance. It really is. Let's say, I mean, I know I'm ignorant at some things too. I don't know everything. I stated that in my first video as well. On this, well, my first like video before like the reboot, or at the reboot basically. So 2 or 3 videos. First 2 or 3 videos. Intro to Existentialism 101. Watch it. Because that I posted that about a year and a half ago. Or well, a year ago. And extremely important finding. See, this is what I love this. I love this. This is extremely important finding. The slide deck's infinitesimal generator of rotations J to 0, -1, 1, 0 is exactly the same matrix as my own 2D Hodge-star operation, which I just implemented from that other paper that I showed you. It's all coming together. It's all this is what I mean. It's like, ooh, there we go. I mean, these things have different definitions as well that relate a little bit more to like specific operators that I'm not familiar with. specific symbolisms and everything else is symbology that I'm not completely familiar with in terms of the physics mathematical relationships. I mean, this is why I also started this with my own metric system, my own reference system using A. I mean, realistically, is more related to the, again, I guess the Hopf von Neumann A matrix versus B matrix. A to B, the neighbors, in one direction, than any direction. And typically, I mean, force, depending on what it is, it can go one directionally or like as a wave. I mean, same thing with light. Funny enough, you can particle or wave. You get either straight particle or entire wave. Force distribution, you'll have vectors, straight vectors or fields. Like, they're manifolds, like electromagnetism, like, I don't know. I think this is like the curse of also being like a generalist when it comes to like educational everythings. Is I mean, this is another thing too that I've at least understood with humanity is, and well, society, is that it forces, or somewhat enforces, that everyone has to specialize in a specific instance for throughout their entire life of a career, of a field of education, of anything, that they have to dedicate their whole entire existence to one specific field if they want to be truly successful in their life, which is antithetical to the whole principle of like figuring out a theory of everything. Because how are you going to figure out a theory of everything if you're not going to be able to figure out everything? I mean, Einstein died before he could do it because it's the same reality applied in his case. He was specialized in spatial geometry and energy distributions and some mass velocity relationships, like power. Like literally E equals MC squared. He specialized in a specific thing, and he had a bunch of other people that specialized in aspects surrounding that specialized thing. Like about 20 to 30 people, right? Like a whole collective of like the most brilliant minds during one of the most high train, one of the most intensive times. Trains are extra loud today, or maybe just beeped at like the exact point where the Doppler effect just didn't matter. Oh man, but this is, it's all of life in existence is ironic, especially what's going on right now in geopolitics. Go check out my other videos too. I know they're more. I have the most controversial video probably of 2026 that I don't know if anyone's gonna find now, soon, eventually, or whenever. But this planet is up to something. Yeah, it's leaking everything out in the space. Ooh, that's more field vectorization, which I just did. But yeah, the true historical context for Israeli Zionism and oligarchy tyranny, which killed Jesus Christ. Definitely not going to be part of the algorithm. Thumbnail's sick though. I like my work there. But yeah, in this instance, I mean, this is debatable. It could be either. No, this is debatable because I mean, when it comes to the belief system that is being imposed, that's literally what happened. The belief system that's being imposed on a society in a region in the Middle East and surrounding Israel, because they believe that a specific group of people are just animals. It's, as Asmongold has said, we also fucking call him out, but friggin' yeah. So and not even just that. I mean, it's literally the same exact instance of Zionist oligarchs, because Israel's not a poor country. Israel's pretty rich, and it's because of us. And we are the military might, the Roman Empire. We are an empire right now, a capitalist empire. So yeah, genuinely history is repeating itself. And who's Jesus Christ? Anyone that's socialist. Ooh, I should put that in the thumbnail. That would be super fucking... Holy shit. Actually. Yo, I'm gonna do that right now. Or this one the same way. Hold on. Same way as I've read the last document, start to finish. Oh my god. Oh my god. I just found out how to really bait people on the fucking thumbnail. Or not, well, bait, I should say. That's mean. That's mean. But to get people to interact with it, I honestly get more hate viewers than I do people with interest, but you know. Oh man. That's how life works. Again, I literally state this in my intro to existentialism video as well, with public perception. But furthermore, so alright, this is actually going to be cool too, because then the text is going to pop a little bit differently. Text. Put it right there. Right there. Literally. Literally. Trying to have that as well. Maybe some opaque. So I don't want to cover Jesus' face. We all want to know who he is. We all want to know what they're against, right? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I could say it right. I got a First Amendment. I'm a United States citizen. Ooh. No, that's still small. Don't preserve aspect ratio. Widen that shit. Yeah, widen that. Really, really widen that, yeah. Or I could do... Well, I can do here. Tickle in his armpit. Oh, that fits like perfect there. Lower that a bit. And then one more arrow. Ooh, ooh. One more, actually. Little daggers. No, not that edgy. Good luck finding one of these. Unless... Daggers used to stab Jesus. Well, that is actually a thing. Okay. Huh. Oh, it's from the assassination of Julius Caesar, per se. The hell? Jesus Christ. I mean, that is a fitting fucking factor. Okay, well. No. Why? I don't even want to know. Oh yeah, no, he did get stabbed though. He did. Oh shit. Okay, well that is a thing. That is a thing. Okay. Why would you want to cosplay as that? Huh. I'm gonna have to do a little editing. But what? What? I mean, this is gonna work. But what? The fuck? Alright, masks. Clear. Or I could do, wait, no, do a fill. Little edge. I could blur it out. But, I mean, even when I resize it too, it's whatever. I don't care. But this makes a lot of sense, yeah? Uh-huh. Hmm. No, oh shit. Alright, I actually see exactly where this crosshair works. Oh, oh, oh. It's fine, you have a little white tip. And then I can color profile that to be something different. Okay, I do that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That works. Can I mask again? Oh, I can. Oh no. Cancel. Don't do that. Fill. Oh. Nope. Oh yeah, that looks. That Jesus Christ. No pun intended. Fuck. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that literally happened, and we're gonna duplicate, and I'm going to flip. 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 Okay, flip. Flip. That. Big red makes sense. Big blue is like the more. That I guess I'll do a circle. We're in deep territory now, boys. send the circle back a few layers. All the layers, actually. But yeah, this is, wow, the most powerful thumbnail I think I've ever made yet. Holy shit. Again, no pun intended. Yeah, this is cancel. I'm gonna make this a little bigger. So I want this point to be made the most. And also gotta merge. Merge, there we go. Yep, this is controversial as you're gonna get. Jesus Part 2. And that's a historical reference. Oh my god. Alright, we'll check out what Claude did in a minute. I know this got completely off topic for a bit, but I might as well. Wrong button. Studio. Content. Yeah, and we're gonna do A/B test. And I actually want to. Wait, what are you A/B testing? Nothing. I want the first to be the old one, and this one to be the controversial one. So let's do that. Change. Let's do that. Again, I mean, this is poking the bear as what I did before, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not even getting shared on this algorithm anyway, so I don't know. If I do, then I mean, I would think something like this would definitely get people thinking. I mean, if anyone recalls, but sure. Because that's what happened, right? That's what happened. I did a bunch of A/B tests as well for other stuff. All right, cool. That's literally what happened. You saw the pictures. You saw, that's history, man. I'm sorry, that's history, but it is what it is. Anyways, moving on. How did we do? All right, this new document gave me a genuine moment of recognition, and I want to explain why it landed differently than most sources do. I read this one the same way I read the last new document, start to finish, before touching anything partway. Something clicked in a way that doesn't happen often. This slide deck derives its own central mathematical object completely independently, coming purely from rotational motion and kinematics, Jesus. With no references to anything I'd built before, and that object turned out to be the exact same operation, not a similar one, as something I'd verified and added to the model only one round earlier, arrived from a totally different mathematical direction. Two separate paths work out separately, landing on the exact identical thing. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, I saw that whole entire thing. I was like, I think this relates. It's gonna be directly to answer something specific on request repeatedly. Same word, displacement, velocity, acceleration, rather than exactly. Thank you. Genuine acceleration for a point sitting at this model's own real position values, not illustrative numbers. The model's own numbers. The source claims velocity is always perpendicular to position. During this kind of motion, instead of repeating that claim, I calculated both vectors directly and confirmed their product comes to exactly 0. One thing I did without being asked a few rounds ago, I got burned by a fixed drawing scale that clipped apart off screen certain values. This round's new picture combines 3 different quantities, position, velocity, and acceleration, that can differ widely in size from each other depending on the exact numbers involved. Rather than assume I'd learned testing those values before finalizing it. Yep. Like this conversation is specifically for all this audit has been very well put together. So now I'm gonna run it again. I'm gonna keep going. Actually, wait. Yeah, just do that. Just do that. I'm gonna see what happens. I should have put continue to explore and investigate, but whatever. In this conversation, this agent, these selective agents that's working with this project, understands the loop procedure at this point. So good. Yep. Good. So given last rounds, let's start. Oh man. Good. This is what I was just talking about rotations. Now we have more complexity regarding how it relates to this geometric framework. And more of a better understanding of at least the mathematics, how the mathematics relates to physics. Oh yeah, someone disproved the Jacobian recently. Or at least they have some examples that can disprove it, but realistically some things are impossible. For the Jacobies, I mean, what it represents, having those solutions, I mean, or instances that don't necessarily, so that disprove it, I mean, could show more so like qualitative limits of mathematics and physics, just like how electromagnetism can kind of explain quantum gravity, but once it gets past a certain scale of, I think, 1, the calculations break. And I think that 1 itself is a limit of, well, realization of mass, form, and metallic quasi-crystal relationships, yada yada. A bunch of different things that I'm still learning about as well. Which is the neat thing, because as I'm doing this, I'm learning about all these different aspects. And this is now reconstructing time, or a time scale relative to the Jacobian. Okay. Yeah, there's different measures of time, but the fundamental measure of time of this system is within itself. It's just mathematically within itself because of, again, that step factor relationship. Using division rather than subtraction or addition, I mean, truth over time, the truth of there's a maximum amount of energy within the universe that exists, whether it's in form or not, and that can be measured either by understanding the total amount of span of space itself at, well, the big freeze, relative to basically an infinitely dense as like Planck size collapse at the Big Bang, and all the energy that is stored within that area. So, I mean, between both of those maximum, there is a maximum amount of energy that does exist. We just haven't been able to measure it yet. We can't observe it. We can kind of guesstimate through this framework, but I'm working on it. Some new topics. All right, let me. So I want to make sure, because this is a pretty big document too. I want to make sure that everything's included for the most part. A specific sentence and ask whether it could be upgraded into something stronger. So I actually built real matrix exponential from scratch using its own defining series rather than assuming the shortcut answer, and confirmed it lands exactly where the known rotation formula says it should. This is good training for Claude too. Well, depending on how they index this conversation into their system, but and I took a theorem this project is only ever tested on one specific matrix many rounds ago and applied it to this new different matrix. The very first time its prediction held exactly here too. There's no longer a resemblance. The same theorem generally checked twice on 2 different objects across 2 separate parts of this work. It's not overselling that the upgrades as if a brand new discovery. It isn't. The connection was already sitting there. Yeah, it's. This is the other thing too that I'm considering. Is I feel like that we've already discovered all the necessary laws and aspects of our universe, and that we've like at least perceived all possible scales of it to some degree where we can genuinely derive, all these relationships together in a theory of everything like this, which is why I'm taking this approach. So, there's your pure transparent insight on at least what I'm doing, whether you agree with it or not. You can let me know down in the comments below. And if anything, if you want to help and give me direction and a bunch of other things to look into and explore, you can also let me know down in the comments below. This is a very long video. It's probably going to be the last one, though. I'm going to take a break. I'm hungry. Oh, man. Let me continue exploring this side deck further. Yeah, this is the eigenvalues. This is what I mentioned about a year ago, and also my thesis regarding eigenvalues and eigenvectors relative to the matrix interpretation of this model. And yeah. My own model's AA max values is 2 angles. Yep. So being able to implement this and to be able to transform the model, like perspective-wise, basically, like changes and bends of the field of space-time itself throughout these gravitational motions, maybe contraction, expansion, potentials, given a limited framework, like the A max being at 1 as 100, like a percentage statistical value, and then the most that it can stretch out to as a linear transformation, or the most that it can stretch like in all different directions, it's respective of its quadrant and the direction of transfer of whatever force, energy, or area, surface area of one top to the bottom. To put it simple. Confirm clean AMX already confirmed. Yeah. So I've gotten in a really good routine with this conversation. The next one I'm gonna have to do the same delivery. I'm gonna have to go basically all the way back to the beginning of this and make sure that at least the same amount of integrity, and also the audit, like the document, I can just have a reference in the project files. So it's good. They said, well, I haven't tried updating the document for a bit. It's huge, so I don't know. But it is just text, so maybe I can get away with adding it in. But it is pretty fucking big. Because this was an extensive conversation, but the next agent conversation could probably catch up on everything just from that alone, which would be great. This is just like the notes that OpenAI agents left themselves for later iterations. Particularly because it's about going back and finish something. Yep. And this is like, at least these last few aspects of like multidimensional geometry that I've finally implemented, because I didn't have this exact form that I showed you earlier in the video. When it comes to the multidimensional translation, I did have a interpretation that worked in the 2D and the 3D separately, and it was able to span different dimensional ratios of emergence and divergence anyways, by replacing the root 2 inherent to the Pythagorean derivation of the inner radii relative to either A or any of the other circles, A minus A max, etc. Those 4 elementary circles that define literally the whole thesis of this. And then from there, it was like a times root 2 minus 1. That was the translational algebra required to display the geometry in that way. So instead, because some interpretations of this, depending on how you process the Pythagorean's theorem and what parts, like basically what levels of the simplification process that you consider, because there's a lot of different ways that you can consider how a square root functions. There's a lot of different ways that you consider exponentials, because again, like a square root is the same as the fractional exponential. So with that in mind, like with that type of more elementary math format design in mind, it makes the intuition a lot easier to understand in regards to like dimensional comparisons and differences. So using that, I was able to originally derive the R div dim, extra dim, and emidims that I originally in the model that did show the emergence of the golden ratio and the silver ratio, whether at to n equals 2, which is relative to, I mean, silver ratio relative to force distribution in two-dimensional plane on a 3D reality, and fifth dimensional emergence, which is the expansion of space itself, basically, and literally the complexities that emerge from reality, from the universe, from within the universe. So, it was originally developed by Pell's equation, the exact equation that defines my own sigma. Yeah, this also went through the Pell numbers and ensuring that the sigma within this model is defined properly, and it is. Genuine solutions to x squared minus 2y squared equals plus or minus 1. Yeah, see, that's... There we go. Yeah, this is the special, conservation relationship? See, and this is also, like, kind of reassuring literally all these different aspects that it's bringing in, and really proving it to, I mean, fundamental mathematics and geometry. Whether it's two-dimensional, three-dimensional, or multi-dimensional, like throughout all dimensions. Because again, we can translate this to the extremes in all ways, and it works. It calculates. There's a reference here for Claude to work with that can genuinely just serve as a proof for everything that's implemented within this model to some degree. So, either proof or representation of a solution, proof, etc. Doubly confirmed demonstration of Brahmaptus. I cannot pronounce that. Composition formula. I'm sorry, sir. Or person, whoever you are. But the Pell numbers, yeah. Okay, yeah, because it's dimensional A equals 2. Because that's relative, like silver ratio, emergence, or well, the reciprocal. The sigma is, in this case, is the reciprocal of the silver ratio, or I wouldn't say the inverse. It's the reciprocal. It's the fraction 1 over the silver ratio. That's what sigma is, which was derived from the multi-dimensional geometry. It's the inverse of this inverse circle-square relationship. That's why it's called ICS. That's why it's related to ADST and super selection and everything else, and it brings certainty to the uncertainty, kind of, to to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. We can measure that. We also have measures of that too. Oh geez, why does my phone never want to work? Oh, just ads. Nothing important. Okay, good. Well. Bum 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 bum. Because it's the kind of find where getting excited about the history could have easily led me to overstate what I actually proved. Buried in one algebraic step of this document, a step used almost in passing just to justify why a certain quantity had to equal plus or minus 1, sat a real centuries-old named result. I didn't just recognize it and move on. I went and confirmed what it actually is and where it came from, and what I found was genuinely striking. The person who first worked with this identity used it specifically to combine known answers to a particular equation and generate new ones. And that equation is the exact same family of equation with the exact same specific number in it that defines this entire project's own central constant from the very start. Huh. Huh. That's the kind of connection where it would be tempting to declare victory immediately, so I took the real values of the project a sequence, once combining the value with itself and separately combining two genuine using exact math with no rounding, and confirmed the predicted result and calculated result matched exactly both times. I also want to be direct about a limit I put on myself. The specific number I tested don't happen to land on the one particular value that I made this identity historically special to begin with. I said so plainly rather than let the excitement of this connection imply that they did. What's genuinely proven here is that the combining procedure itself works correctly with this project's own numbers, not that those numbers reproduce the historically famous case. Those are two different claims, and only the first one is true here. Alright, I'm interested about that then. Continue exploring further into this thread by exploring all possible values. Curious. This is just how it works. Because when I see things like this, I'm like, okay, like if there's more that you can do, go for it. I want to see what happens. And then when I do this, I find out more things. Assume properly. Yeah, this is a good question. I like this. I like this. This might lend to Riemann Zeta hypothesis proof in that regard. Because plus or minus 1, I mean, absolute value, that'd be 2. In that regard, it's to be plus 1 plus 1. I mean, that is a dualistic system, also like ternary, because plus or minus 1, and then you still have 0. So this is interesting to explore. In every case, directly upgrades my earlier honest scope. Yeah, extraordinary. This is the true historically faithful demonstration, precisely verified, composing two genuine k equal 1 solutions with my own sequences, produced a new k equals 1 solution exactly, and composing k equals 1 with k equals negative 1 produces k equals negative 1 exactly. This is, yep. Own historical method for generating infinite solutions to Appel's equations, now genuinely demonstrated hitting the exact target he cared about. Let me upgrade. So we have that fully implemented now. See, that this is why I keep pursuing a lot of this. A lot of these discoveries and, well, relationships, really. It's not even so much discoveries because someone else has already technically discovered it, but how it relates to, well, everything. So. That's some cool shit. And I'll probably have like one more prompt in this. This is also good that it's like taking things step by step. It's doing things one thing at a time like this, even with the loop. Because it's also not like if it makes something major or something extensive, especially if it's like something that we're implementing into the model that's completely new, then it'll take up a lot of the usage. But otherwise, going this route, going through things like one by one, making sure that like things actually make sense mathematically relative to the geometry of the system, then yeah. And again, this system follows conservation fundamentally in the one-dimensional plane, like which is the radius, but also in the two-dimensional surface area as well, or three-dimensional surface area. I mean, any surface area in and of itself. Well, actually, no. That's something I want to explore. Three-dimensional surface area conservation. Because that equation changes. The radius doesn't change. The radius is always going to be one-dimensional point to point, regardless of like what dimension it's in. Which I think that's the special property of well, circles. I mean, because you have one point to the next point. Squares get complicated because they have edges. Circles do not, because they meet from the same end, from one end to the same end, with no corners. So it's weird. Pi is a wonderful thing. Oh man. See, last time, rather than applying surgically through possibilities, I thought about it first. There's a well-known general relationship between exactly this kind of paired sequence and exactly this kind of target sequence pointing to one specific natural candidate, a half version of sequence. This project is already established several rounds ago, paired with the same Pell sequence I used before, because this is like a half-life consideration, because a radius is half diameter. And we already went over how the framework's designed, so I shouldn't need to make that more obvious. It worked not coincidentally, but consistently across 11 consecutive cases I checked, hitting the exact historically significant target each single time, alternating in sign and in exactly the pattern the underlying theory predicts. Instead of confirming, I went back and reran the last round's own composition procedure with the one whose entire historical point was generating new answers to this exact target from known ones. Using these newly confirmed genuine values, composing two real solutions produced a brand new genuine solution to the exact equation. Composing one against a solution of the opposite sign produced the correctly signed opposite result. That's the real thing Brahmagupta was doing. Now, actually, thank God you don't have to like pronounce this, even though you probably pronounce it better than me. I could do with the voice, use voice mode. No thanks. Correctly signed opposite result. Yeah, now demonstrating with it, not around it. My earlier caution wasn't wrong. At that point, with the pairing, I'd actually tested it was true. What changed is that you asked me to keep looking rather than accept the final word. And the correct pairing was sitting in the material this project is already built, not somewhere new. I wrote it up specifically, answering the question. And a lot of this, most of these things that are being added is under the Trudem panel as well, if you want to go look into this yourself. Trudem panel is under the dimensions panel. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. And also make sure that, all right, that's good. I'm pretty sure it's dropping everything off there. But this panel also lags as a heads up. But this is the most extensive. We have spectrometer, which depends on that step factor size. So depending on what you set, you can actually get different, like, visible light spectrum emerging. Depending on the dimension, Argon diagrams, depending on the dimension, this is the conservation. Like, showing you how conservation, like, kind of works in this system. So N volume and perimeter in the 1D, like I just said, those match. Area and volume itself within dimensional values do not work. Well, this is n equals 1. I can change actually this to any value and be able to measure. And this should match at least like the gamma functions form, obviously. That's kind of the whole point. So yeah, since it's one dimensional right now, yeah, so that's actually really cool. I just realized that myself. This is more so yeah, the full circle radii, family volumes, circumferences as well. Yeah, some of them are non-existent because like our divdim, our emidim, they depend on n. So in the one-dimensional, they don't really, calculate because it's like the square root of 1. It's just 1 minus 1 is 0. It ends up being undefined at one dimension. That's why those radii are special. And they, see, now I set it to 2, and it matches R2. Oh. Oh. Emergence and extra dimensional matches the neighbor exactly. This is what I mean. This is exactly the fucking principle that I'm talking about when it comes to interdimensional emergence and how it influences neighboring pixels. Because R2 is the neighbor. This isn't implemented in the model. This is the opposite. This is like literally if you took A max and like if you overlapped, like I said, the lattices, if you overlapped it, this is the overlap factor. This is the neighboring lattice that's being overlapped. And it broke because it's updating. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And that is relative exactly to that extra dimensional and emerging dimensional factors that the ratios are exact. And that's the point. Those ratios emerge from that relationship between conserved holographic systems. Oh my god. Like, it's all there. And when people say it's AI psychosis, and I'm like, it's fucking math, dude. It's fucking math. How? Like, that's not, but that translated exactly how it's supposed to. What do you mean? Oh my god. 5 rounds ago, I started reading this document from scratch. Since then, I worked generally behind rotations. I think we got everything. Specifically, oh, that was the document from yesterday. Found one more than it's close enough to a small test case, because that's not really what the claim is about. The actual claim is how fast the error shrinks as the angle shrinks. So the fine-tuning, specific structural property, not just approximate closeness at one point. So I checked the size of the error against the specific rate it's supposed to shrink at and confirmed it lines up. This was also part of my thesis as well when it comes to like having a theory of everything, or well, a fundamental of the cosmic consciousness being realized as a theory of everything, is that, and how do I really even word this? You can read the thesis. I know I stated in there, but it's the fact that like the coincidences that, not even just that, if you know everything, then you can minimize the amount of error. That's what I'm trying to think. Jesus Christ. Like, if you know super selection and you super determinism, by definition, those would negate the possibility of error in calculation and measure. If those things are true to the universe, and they are to this geometry. It's super deterministic. Everything is measurable. And it just resolves the uncertainty principle in a way. The uncertainty principle still exists, mind you, because measuring anything that's going toward the speed of light, like within a set amount of time, like that we experience, it doesn't matter. Again, this is a ratio issue. And this is, again, why the ratios in this geometric model relate to fucking everything. So, yeah, but having this sort of understanding will mitigate error. And this is part of literally that exact, like, thesis. I just saw a fucking spider. Oh my god. Alright, it knows to work off that document now too, so I'm gonna fucking continue to investigate, explore if there are any further connections. Okay. Oh yeah, because I had this on mobile as well, so that's myself again. Unless I got hacked. That'd be silly. Yeah, it was almost 3 hours. This is gonna be like one of the longest ones. But I'm sharing my experiences with you, so y'all can see for yourself instead of reading through what I'm going through. And if you're knowledgeable about these aspects, if you understand at least all of these concepts and mathematical like derivations and like the specifics, the nuances and factors more so than I do, because this is a lot to even learn for myself. But with at least the focus that I have, I mean, like with Stern Burkhardt and Fare, like this stuff is so like out there. But with these considerations all in one place, the amount of physics that can be derived from this, the amount of relationships that can be derived from this model, I mean, I'm telling you, lead to actual solutions to like Navier, Stokes, and everything else. It's just going to take obviously a lot more. This is interesting. So sigma times the derivative of sigma. Oh no, sigma. Oh, it's also sigma, isn't it? No, fucking, I forget. -1 and 2. That's interesting. What? See, no, sigma. Is that gamma, right? No. Shit. Shit. Again, let me know down in the comments below. I just forget right now. It's a lot. I was just looking at that. That's interesting. That is interesting. Yeah, again, this is... And even since the early beginning, I was able to at least demonstrate with the early diverging dimensional radii family, the old one, I was able to demonstrate relationships to the Riemann zeta function and, well, the shells of the critical points of the non-trivial zeros. So at least up to the first 10, and even within the small expands it's still been correct. It just doesn't model all of it. It's a lot. So that'll be another part and aspect that I'll expand upon as well. But at least with the first 10, it has some sort of context, and I'm pretty sure there's more within the Riemannian geometry tab. Riemannian. Oh my god. So many different ways to pronounce things. Tomato. Freaking. Yeah, it's... I don't know. Basically running out of steam. I am hungry. I just want to see what this is now, because I can look at the nuances. I'm not going to read through all that as fast as this is processing. It's insane. Oh, man. I'm also glad, too, that at least Anthropic has, like, done a really good job with the conversation compression to allow me to even go this far in one conversation now. Whereas before, like, I wouldn't be able to have half the amount of processing done and modeling done within one conversation. When the model was like 1 to 2 megabytes in size, if that. Or back to like when it was 20,000 lines of code. Which, I mean, after that it really started popping off, but that's also when I started this, I think, when it was still Sonnet like 2.5, Sonnet 3. So all those changes really, really mattered. And honestly, have made it a lot easier to do this. And again, this is the other thing too. I'm using Sonnet. I'm not using the highest models. I don't want the system to overthink a lot of these things. I don't want it to overstep. I purposely use Sonnet for that, because I just want it to be mathematically grounded, code-based grounded, just as objectively grounded to the material that we're working on. And in order to do that, I gotta use Sonnet 5. And I use the max because I want it to be thorough. As thorough as possible. And this has been probably the most progress that I've made, at least with this model. Something almost embarrassing about this round's finding in a good way. It's not a new idea, it's something that I've been leaning on quietly for a very long time without ever actually checking. This project's own central matrix has a specific structural property that makes a lot of what's been built on it work the way it does. I've used this matrix constantly throughout across this entire project, but not once ever stopped to confirm this particular property directly. I'd simply been assuming it. The way you assume a tool works because it always seemed to. yeah, I know. So I checked it in two different ways on purpose, and I want to be honest about which one actually matters more. The first way was the ordinary numerical approach. Plug in the real decimal values, multiply things out, see what you get. That came back essentially 0, but essentially is doing some work there. Decimal approximations of rational numbers always carry a tiny bit of unavoidable noise, so a result that looks like 0 isn't quite the same proof that it is 0. So this is just getting into depth with the code base. The second way is the one I actually trust. I took the result and reduced it down using nothing but two of the very most basic facts this whole project established at the very beginning. Nothing borrowed, nothing approximate, and it collapsed to exactly 0, with no rounding involved anywhere in that particular path. That's the real confirmation. The numerical check is a nice sanity confirmation alongside it, but the algebra is actually what proves it. What is this? This is a long ass document. It should go more in depth here. Holy shit. Yeah, this is huge changelog. This is only on version 294. Wait, well, not necessarily, because I started at like version like 40 something. Within this conversation, I literally started within like the 40s, I believe, or no, like 30 something. Yeah, I started with like a very early numbered version, but they already went through a lot of like fundamental iterations that got it to this point. So now we're updating like constantly. So verify with now 300, 200. Still open. Whole curly file balance after each edit. Fresh. 0 new errors beyond the same. What did you do? Wait, then found a second time. Direct algebraic simplification using two of the project's own most basic, earliest established facts, recognized explicitly that the second method is the stronger of the two. It shows the mathematically detailed proof what this process was, and I'm referring to this whole, just all this. Referring to I just want to see what you're talking about, my guy. Like, are you talking about like the AA Max? I just wanted to see what you're doing. Eigenvector derivations. Okay. Yeah, it is. This is following my initial prospects of this whole thesis. Okay. And the whole framework. Yeah, I still have 64 dead codes to audit as well. And the dead code is just stuff that seems like it might not be connected to anything. It might just be loose code. Or it might not be correctly calling from any of the pre-established, like, fundamental factors. All right. The matrix in question, money sign n, m, begin P matrix 2 and 1, 1 and 0, and P matrix. This is genuinely symmetric since M12 equals M21, or M12, M21 equals 1 by spectral theorem. A real symmetric matrix has real. Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Setup. Yeah, so 2, 0, 1, 1. The eigenvalues and the characteristic polynomials, the eigenvalue solves determinant m minus lambda I equals 0 by the quadratic formula. The two roots are sigma, and this is the silver ratio. Also the other aspect of the silver ratio. Okay, so using those. Oh yeah, yeah. This is like the two emerging geometric like, again, the extra dimensional, dimensional, basically, or well, the real extra dimensional. Like if you plus a factor of a, or plus the radius, and then plus that dimensional multiplicative factor. Like say if it was a times sigma, a times this, a times that, that would be relative to the derived radii that we have in this geometric system. So for any 2x2 matrix, which, I mean, this kind of shows 2x2, you get 4 in a weird way, geometrically. So by Vieta's formula, all right, determinant. This has to do, yeah, the eigenvectors. These two identities come from integer arithmetic on m's own entries, no square root, no decimal expansion, no rounding anywhere. Trace of m and determinant of m are exact integers by definition, and Vieta's formulas are algebraic identity, not numerical approximation. For eigenvalues, it gives 1, one of that. So V naught, oh no, V sigma, V gamma. Okay, I forget the actual fucking term. Root A, numerical substitute that directly, and you get floating point error all the way down to here. It's not exactly 0, so that's what it was referencing. If you do the same way from decimals, come back as 1.9 and negative 1.0. Reassuringly close, but not exact for the exact same reason. So yeah, it attempted to be as exact as possible, but because of floating, like, just limitations in computation itself. So that's why the algebraic means. So algebraic, expand symbolically first before substituting at any of the numbers. So sigma root 2. So this was the sigma gamma, and then replace as well. Oh, it got rid of the square roots too. Or at least, yeah. Oh, because x, y. Kind of. Huh. So this is x, and this would define y. X is the multiplicative property, y is the additive property. Plus 4. Because that's what it was referencing before in terms of the form relative to the coordinate system that we have in this system. So now substitute the exact facts from 2. Yep, this was previously established. So that's 2, which never required writing anything down, a digit of that. Substitute in -1 there, 2 there, equals -1. I mean, yeah, that normalizes out. And then that times that, because you just solve for that, +1, the -1, 0 exactly. What is the P naught? Oh, it's because it's the matrix multiplication, duh. Alright. Yeah, and then when you algebraically do that out, yeah, to the linear algebra. And that's how that calculates. Interesting. Yeah, so that times that matrix form, you'll get those like eigenvalue vectors. Wow. Root B never touches a decimal, it reduces the entire claim to 2 integer facts. Trace M equals 2. And then 1 over this is the Riemann Zeta solution. So 1 over the trace of M. Interesting. I don't have that in here. Do I? Yeah, that. Very interesting stuff. Trace M. If I did the inverse, it's just to the power of -1. Oh! Whoa, 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 whoa. Wait a minute. 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 Because I can also do this, and because we have trace of M equals 2, and we have what equals -1? Yeah, not that. And this is interesting. Okay, this is a path that I'm very curious on. If I can fucking type correctly. Do that. And what if I did that? What if that's the relationship necessary to really explain the proof, the determinant? Because the determinant of M equals -1. And the solution to Riemann Zeta hypothesis is 1/2. It converges to 1/2, fundamentally. If this lends to that proof, like that to the power, or we can even consider, well, it wouldn't be negative 1/2. This is the only way it would actually process in that form properly, because it's not a negative 1/2, it's a positive 1/2. And this is how it could maybe. I'm very interested in that. Excuse me? Thank you. Don't confuse it too much, my guy. Oh no, I wanted that. Okay. Parentheses matter. They matter a lot. Okay, that's between that. Is that 1 over double parenthesis? Because there's a few ways of looking at this. 1 over n to the power of n over 2. This is some of the algebra that at least I wanted to consider, because this is how my brain's like considering it. Because we also have that, and this would be whatever dimension you set relative to the second dimension of analysis. And we also have either h over k or, hold on. I have to make sure that I get this part right. Trudim. It's down here. Because I do have dimensional split, or well, comparisons. So I'll explain that here. This is why Trudim is the most heavy section describing literally like every single dimension that exists and what relates to it, what emerges from, like dimensional everything. Slide and slide. So we got k. It was k, and there's, I'm pretty sure it's just k and h. Oh, k and m. What was the? What was my initial consideration that I put previously? Yeah, k plus 1, because these are the transformations. Yeah, quantum. This is like relative to like quantum spin. And this is where the Pell numbers start to come into play, and the plus, like the 1 plus or minus root 2. Yep. So this is the parts that we just went over. Jacobi. Where was the forms of the equations I was running? Oh, k. That was k over m. I'm gonna have to consider both directions, but it is definitely k over m. K over m. And parentheses, we good? We good, homie? Yep, we're good. Because basically the reciprocals of these dimensional relationships might lead to the solution, or the proof, rather. M over k. And I want to consider at least both, I mean, aspects regarding that. new multi-dimensional. Specifically, because again, I mean, it's literally, but primes is an emergent qualia of the universe. It's an emergent qualia of the mathematics of, well, the geometry, right? So how are you going to prove it? Like this? maybe this might, maybe. But this is definitely a rabbit hole that I'm going to explore right now, and I'm going to see if I'm going to hit the wall. That's very interesting, though. I'm truly like, that is the solution if you put it in that form. So I'm curious. And the reason why I'm using the n with the power of n over 2 is because if we set the second dimension of measure analysis, it does solve the Riemann Zeta function. It does end up simplifying to 1/2 as like the sum. Yes. So in 2 dimensions, we do have a collapse of that because, I mean, n over 2, and this is probably where the emergence of primes come from. Confirmed. Yes, I know that. I know. I want to explore. A March 2026 status report is supposed to say no numerical evidence, however vast, constitutes a proof. So does that mean math? It doesn't work. Does that mean you have to use geometry? What does that mean? This is interesting. I don't know. This is something to explore. Oh man, yeah. The limits of because AI is so limited in what it can like imagine or will hallucinate. This is why it's not like we don't allow it to figure things out for us in the way that we want it to. I mean, we can't because it disagrees with, I mean, how we use the technology, how we want to use the technology, or how it affects it. It's, oh, this is strange. Yeah, can we? I don't want you to quit. I want you to keep exploring, my guy. You didn't explore necessarily anything. Huh? Okay. Hmm. I'm just very curious. Because I think that it's that tautology that proves the thesis, that proves the equation. Half-life tautology, literally. Like, the duality of nature itself. Like, maybe that's the real answer and not mathematical fucking proof. I don't know. That's a weird statement to find, though, especially from like a few months ago. I feel like they're just giving up. The hell? It's like no matter how vast, it's like this is saying that there's no way to prove it. It's very ignorant. Oh man. Yeah, I don't think you handled it. Let's see what happens. This is strange. This is strange. I want you to be reckless. I want you to... Not that reckless. Connect the song process. Yes, yes. I don't care. I just want to fucking figure this out, man. Attached, nobody claimed, given that. Found something worth flagging, honestly. Two of the specific expressions you named weren't actually two separate calculations that happened to agree. They were the exact same expression, just written two different ways. The second one only equals the first because one of the numbers plugged in is literally the exponent used in the other. It's not a confirmation of anything, it's a tautology, and I said so plainly rather than, yeah. One specific number from this project's own matrix does equal the specific value at the center of them, but equal isn't the exact same as connected. I understand. I want you to explore this further, though. Oh, man. At least, like, from the fundamental, like, design of this model and how, like, emergence is measured over its flow, I'm going to tell it to take risks. I'm going to... Do 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 do. I said it somewhere in here. There we go. I'm gonna try this. Yes, I know it just kind of docks me on. I don't care. Little clues here and there who I am, I suppose. If anyone ever finds this interesting. Like you can analyze, you can look into it. I'm not. That's what I want you to do. Just to explore. And this is like the limits. I mean, this is great that all these things are being integrated. Yeah, you know? Sure. Hmm. Oh, well, this might actually be some of the errors that we still had left, actually. So you know what? I'm guessing I'm gonna have to redo this comment. Hmm. Uh, uh, uh. Risks with all possible risks. All right, I think this is a better statement to load in. Well, I guess that's it for today. Well, I know what I'm doing later. Thank God. Friggin'. Let me check whether. Interested. I feel like a lot of these guards are already in place too. I also, honest fix for both of the visualizations in text display. I think it's more so just a presentation rather than a calculation. When it's fixing a lot of these. Okay. Which, I mean, this will fix error runtimes as well. And at least, like, realizations that understanding where undefines exist, because they do exist, is important. So I guess if it fixes that, as long as it doesn't fuck with the nature of the function, I'm fine. But Yeah, I mean, it just needs to be as transparent as possible. So that seems to be fine. But this will also perhaps help with some of the calculations within the model as well, now that like these definitions are there for these specific instances and cases. So when it goes to utilize all this. All right, well, we'll explore this another time, but I guess until then, this is Sparks AMPs. This is a long-ass stream. But enjoy. I don't think I'll do another one later. I got a lot of other stuff to do around the house. So until then, yeah, check this out, and I'll see y'all, I don't know, next week. Take care, enjoy your weekend. Bye. And hopefully this is something that, I don't know, you want to explore, might be interested in, and yada yada. Or you can hate watch, I don't care. I don't care. I have a lot of hate watchers, but anyways, until next time.